episode 178, Simple Living, but Make It Frugal.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Welcome to Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And today we are talking about simple living, how we define it, how you can live it, and its role in frugality.
Ooh, hot take.
We haven't taken anything hot yet, Jill. Just you wait.
Even the title,
Yes.
We're gonna get into it.
We will, but first we're going to get into our sponsors. So this episode is brought to you by Meeting in Person. So again, do you live in the Austin, Texas area? Would you like to meet me? I'm the one with the curly hair. You can head to our Instagram, Frugal Friends Podcast, at Frugal Friends Podcast, and you can see which one I am. And if you say, oh, yes, I would like to meet her, and I am in Austin.
Because she has curly hair. Not the straight-haired girl, the curly-haired girl.
Not the straight-haired girl. But if you want to meet the straight-haired girl, and you live in Fairbanks, Alaska, then send us a DM on Instagram. If you're in Fairbanks, Alaska, or Austin, Texas, because between September 22nd and 24th, that's where we're going to be. Not together, but separate.
Separate.
We're doing
called
a
the Divide and Conquer tour.
Yes. And I don't know what my schedule is going to be like. Jill's a very busy woman, so don't count on her. But I would love to meet some of y'all if you're in Austin. So send us a DM, either at Frugal Friends Podcast or at Modern Frugality. I'm on both. And maybe we can meet up, see how many DMs I get, and what kind of shenanigans we can get into in Austin. So that's what we're brought to you by.
There's so much in that sponsor that I want to dive into, but mostly I think I'm just going to want the clip of your audio saying, Jill's a very busy woman, so don't count on it. Like, I want you know those buttons you can get from Staples? Like, that was easy. I want one of those. I'll just press the button. Don't count on it. Don't count on it. She's busy. It'll be my entryway into simple living. That button.
What a segue, but still, we have another sponsor.
Also brought to you by It's Complicated. Here to tell us that it's not just a relationship status we're trying to avoid. It's also a lifestyle we want to avoid. Use code intentionality and communication for 10% off. It's complicated complications.
That is a complicated promo code, and I don't actually even know what it gets me.
How do I type
That's complex.
intentionality?
That's complex.
You'll get there someday.
So that is what we are talking about today, is simple living. And I think when I think about it, I think first of maybe like simple living home blogs or mom blogs telling you how to get your kids to go to bed or clean up their messy things and maybe cook better. So that's kind of like what I think of when I think of. What do you think of with simple living, Jill? Am I weird?
No, I'm just still laughing about the messy things, the kids' messy things. I mean, I have an association probably with the magazine, but yes, I think I picture somebody out in a field, closing their eyes at peace, living a simple life.
Yeah. I mean, I think of a stay-at-home mom that's like, you can do everything just like me as long as you have 40 hours a week to do it. And that's not us. Spoiler alert, if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, we all know Jill's a busy woman.
so don't count on her.
So don't count on it if that's what you're looking for. But Wikipedia has a better, I think, definition. I get all my information from Wikipedia. Sorry to my high school English teacher. So simple living may be characterized by individuals being satisfied with what they have rather than want. And so I think that's really the heart behind the frugality that we talk about and that we want to live, is to be individuals who are satisfied with what they have rather than what we want, but still always looking to grow. So
yeah, that's the thing. It's not stagnant. It's not, and that's where I say my image of what comes to mind when I think of simple living, that's not obviously actually it. Someone on a hill, like closing their eyes.
Right.
That's
and
not
mine is
real
wrong
living.
too.
We don't want to just be there, but there is a contentment that can happen here.
Yeah. So the opposite of simple, so what we're trying to avoid, are antonyms like difficult, hard, demanding, complicated, complex, elaborate. So those are kind of the words that we don't want to describe the things in our life. And so it's rare that any one thing in your life is going to be the opposite of simple. And that's how we create these complicated and demanding lives and elaborate, complex schedules. So it's important to view your life as a whole and to really be relentless in saying no to things that make the overall picture really difficult or complex or elaborate. And these articles that we've chosen today kind of go into what we like to think simple living is, and its connection to frugality, and then some tips on implementing it. So, yeah, our first article is from Heart's Content Farmhouse, and it's called The Ultimate Guide to Simple Living for Beginners. How did you feel this related to you, Jill?
I thought this was super beautiful, and I like the approach that they take. And I know we'll get into it as we talk about the content a little bit more, but just the concept that there can be some things that might seem simple or promise to simplify or make your life more convenient, but when you look at the whole of it, it actually makes it more complicated. We'll talk more about that as we move through the article, but I think that was what stood out to me most from this of, oh, we need to look under the surface, not just at cost of something or convenience of something, but how they all blend together in their total simplicity quotient. I might use that word in a long time.
Wow. I was really pleased that this was the first result on Google. So for those of you that don't know, the way we pick our articles that we go through is that we Google the topic, see what comes up on the first page, and then we kind of go through what you would get if you did the same Google, and we kind of dissect it. We test Google in a way. And so sometimes it's not always the first article that we go with because it's just not my favorite. And this one was, and I was super pleased that this one was better than many others on the first page. So we're going to kind of go through what the author defines as simple living and then her approaches to it. So I like her definition. It's different. She says, let's avoid the cliche of giving the dictionary definition. That's why I went with Wikipedia. And so typically what simple living means to most normal people, if you're not me and Jill, is minimalism, old-fashioned living, which I don't know if I've heard that. Frugal living, yes, and self-sufficiency. And so I actually, had forgotten about that. To me, self-sufficiency seems more complicated because I'm just bad at that. But for some people, self-sufficiency is simpler.
Yeah. Just even going through the motions of not needing to rely on the outside world. It's not that it is necessarily the most simple in its action, but I think it can bring about this sense of simplicity and catharsis with that kind of theme. But she's saying it's not really any one of these things. It's a combination of them.
Right. She says, The pursuit of a simple life is about rejecting what is unnecessarily complicated. I loved that line. What's uncomplicated?
Yes. And I like the way she's summarizing. You kind of mentioned this in your beginning intro about Wikipedia versus the opposite of simplicity. The opposite of simplicity, and the reason she's saying that all of those other associations aren't necessarily simple living, they intersect with it, but it's not the opposite of modern or expensive or dependent. The actual opposite of simple is complicated. So looking at how do we make sure that it is as unnecessarily not complicated. Am I saying that right?
As little unnecessary complication as possible.
There you go. Thank you.
Because, we do understand that sometimes there's going to be complicated things in your life. But hopefully those complicated things are for a season, and there are things that you literally just cannot avoid.
Mm-hmm. So now that we've said what we're not talking about, here's what we are talking about. Some of the basics, and of course this is not an exhaustive list, but rejecting what is unnecessarily complicated in pursuing people over things, living with less, learning to actually enjoy the small things, the simple pleasures, if you will. No longer chasing after more. That's the next thing that I have to do. It's what will make me happy. It's what everyone else is doing. And being happy, or I might say content, with what you do have already. So in some ways, we're talking about perspective and mindset. And of course, what this list has just talked about does intersect with frugality and minimalism and maybe even old-fashioned living. But it is not only about those things. It's kind of where all of these pieces combine.
Yeah, the one thing I always, when I hear contentment, I always want to, remind people is that we're not okay staying where we're at. We're happy and we're grateful to be where we are, but we are always pursuing the opportunity for more. We're not chasing it. It's not, more will not fulfill you. More will not take you to the identity that you are looking for. It's not going to fulfill your purpose. But I think things that stop growing are considered dead. And we should always be looking to learn and grow and refine ourselves. So being happy with what you have, but also looking for opportunities to capitalize on the talents and the gifts and all of that you have to learn and grow.
Yeah, it's holding that tension between not becoming stagnant, but also not being overtaken or consumed by whatever it is you think needs to happen next.
Yeah, definitely. So then she talks about going deeper into simple living. So she says, what do we mean here? Rejecting what is unnecessarily complicated. Does that mean making life as easy as possible? Because that's another thing that sometimes people looking for simple living can go to that extreme, to where they're looking to make life so easy that it actually becomes a burden for other people. And we know as frugal people, we can do that same thing. Looking to be so frugal and spend so little money that sometimes it comes at the actual monetary expense of other people. And so that is not what we are looking to do in simple living. So yes, is it going to sometimes be an inconvenience to the people in our life? Yes, because sometimes we're going to have to say no, just like a hard stop no without a good explanation. But you can build that muscle to enact that boundary. So yeah, that's what I think. I think that's what she meant with this, going deeper into simple living.
Yeah, and I also like the example that she gave, that it's not just about convenience, because you could decide, I'm going to stop cooking because that doesn't feel simple to me or life-giving. It feels complicated. So I'm going to go out for every meal. But then there's a cost to that. And she mentions this too, you'll likely find yourself in poor health and potentially credit card debt. I mean, hopefully not credit card debt for meals, but you never, right? If we're just saying we're going to go out for every meal and avoid all other peripheral impacts of that, you can't. It will take over another area. So it's not just about convenience. It's not about avoiding all complication, but again, that unnecessary complication piece.
Yeah.
So, and again, she digs into this more, and I think this is helpful. Some things in life that are complicated and would likely be rejected by someone looking for simplicity. So these are things that are typically touted as this will make your life better, more enjoyable, maybe even more convenient, but let's go through them. She lists off potentially a high-stress job with a long commute, or an expansive home renovation that requires you to take out a loan that you can barely afford, or a new designer wardrobe that's dry clean only, or a sports car that requires expensive maintenance. I've never even heard of a wardrobe, by the way, that only requires dry clean.
I hate that many authors are just very extreme when they give examples, and it's not actually practical. Typically, it's going to be hard to see in your own life where these things happen because they're not obvious like these things. They're subversive. You have to really look at what in your life is complicated, and it may not be the same across the board. But she gives like alternative to these. So she's like, what about a job that pays less but is in walking distance to your house and has a nice boss? Well, you may not get both of those. Yes. You may have to choose. Do you want walking distance or do you want the nice boss? So it's going to be a give and take on this stuff too, right? So too small but is easily affordable. It could be, or is, maybe a further drive from your job or maybe closer to your job. I don't know. It's probably going to be one or the other. Clothing that's comfortable and can be washed at home. Honestly, I don't think anybody's in our audience is going to have a problem with this. But it could be taking the extra time. I mean, this is where thrifting kind of gets involved for me because, to me, thrifting can be a little complicated. And so I tend to pay a little bit more to go to ThredUp, which is the online thrift store, because that feels less complicated to me. Online shopping feels less complicated to me. So it gives and takes on that too, right?
Yeah. And everybody's answer to that is going to look different. What feels simple to me is not going to feel simple to you. Oh, case in point, the way Eric and I approach our calendars. I think it is much more simple to have a pen and paper calendar. And he's like, why aren't we sharing calendars and integrating this and that? And I'm just like, maybe you think that's simple, but not for me.
Yeah. Travis and I need to figure out something. When he had an iPhone, we used to share a calendar and he would just always know when things were happening. And now he's got an Android and we can no longer do that. And so it's always like, what are we doing? And I was like, maybe we need a paper calendar or something. I don't know. That's off topic. I'm so sorry. But the last one is to buy a used, reliable station wagon that's good enough. I do agree with that one. Don't get your dream car. Get a car that's good enough.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you've got a car that is old and just good enough, sometimes it puts you in precarious situations. And I am speaking from very real and raw and recent experience.
Your car was not good enough. Your car was about to be death on wheels. So that's not good enough. That was a situation where we were like, Jill, please get a new car because you are on the edge of being unsafe. So I'm saying not one with all the you don't need all the top of the line luxury things just because the dealer is telling you to test drive it and it looks so pretty and it's so great. And believe me, I want a Lexus. Who doesn't? But I got a Hyundai because it's good enough.
The Lexuses aren't even looking that nice anymore, so
we'll
be all right. We'll all be all right.
All right, whatever. I'll wait for a Tesla. Used Tesla one day. All right.
So, and just to summarize too, I like how she wraps up this portion of the article by talking about looking at these pieces holistically, that a lot of times there is a price beyond the money of time and stress that can complicate your life. So we are not just looking at one of these components. How much time does it take me? Or how much money does it cost me? Or how much stress is involved? We've got to look at all of them and identify what's the most simple option when I take all of these factors into consideration, because there's always going to be an alternative piece, the cost benefit analysis of it in all of these areas.
Yeah, it is harder to do that because we want a set of rules that we can just live by and follow for everything. And we can kind of do that when you find your core values and you can live by those. Those are a good filter, but still for big things, we have to look at the picture holistically. And our life obviously is one of those big things, our schedule, our time, our money. Those are big things that we have to look holistically at to really inspect how we can execute simple living, not just by a set of rules that maybe somebody else creates, but by a set of rules that we ourselves create. So our next article has 9 tips for executing simple living. And I liked that these were not just maybe cookie cutter. They are simple, but they caused me to think a little harder. How do you feel about them, Jill?
Oh, such good tips here. And I think within this list, there's at least one actionable item. So I'm excited to go through all 9 of them because I think, and hopefully more than one, we can each take and implement.
Yeah. So the first one was quiet the digital noise. This makes me feel personally attacked, but I agree with it. I think I'm discovering more ADHD tendencies in myself and knowing that my brain just can't sit still. I'm trying to get off social media more and I have just replaced it with solitaire. I feel like I've mentioned this before.
I actually watched this happen real time.
Yeah.
In the car driving together, Jen is both having a conversation with us and playing solitaire.
It's been a very big struggle for me to turn my mind off. Yeah. But I know my mind and my eyes, for that matter, really do need this simplification of existence and not so much bombardment from digital noise. And so, one of the ways that she says is dedicate a time of the day to reply to emails. My assistant now does all the emails for every inbox we have. So that has been a really great simplification strategy for me.
Well, she does give some really helpful tactics. Sometimes it's like you feel thrown to the wolves of, I know I got to be off this phone more, but how? And so, unsubscribing to things, dedicating time to reply to emails, removing social media apps from your phone, making regular times for digital detoxing, turning off non-essential notifications, not sleeping with your phone next to you, right? And you don't have to do all of these things. And some of it can just help the brainstorming get started. But there are some really specific ways that we can do this.
Yeah, I took Facebook off of my phone, which is a little inconvenient sometimes, but for sure worth it. And then also I've turned off pretty much all notifications. So those have been my major things. I haven't done everything on this list, but definitely the Facebook one and the notifications.
I don't think all of them are realistic for everybody, and certainly not even long term. It's kind of one of those things that you put into practice to retrain yourself, to make better decisions about what you do want to let back in. So some of it, there's a rhythm to. Some of it is just determining the best way to live and operate. It depends on the type of business that you're a part of or running or the way that you work. So, but just being more intentional about it and knowing and recognizing the space that it can take up to have all of these things vying for your attention constantly. Number 2 on here is to watch less TV. Ooh, This one can
Again,
feel like a
attacked.
personal attack too. And they say, and I wouldn't disagree with this, although there's some parts of it that I might push back on, but that watching TV isn't actually going to provide rest to us. I think sometimes we think, oh, I just want to sit and watch a movie. And that's okay. We're not saying, and I don't think this article is saying like cut it all out always and forever, but that you probably would have and experience better benefit if you've got some time in the evening and you choose to do some stretching or engage in a hands-on hobby than just sit and binging TV. Like what is actually going to produce life inside of you. Now, I will say finding a good show can absolutely produce some disconnection, but I will absolutely agree with like not binging things constantly, but finding something else to do with your time that can bring life.
Absolutely, yeah. But my ADHD mind does love to veg on a TV show at night, especially if it's about cults.
Yes. This is something Jen and I definitely bond over beyond all the other things we bond over is cult information on cults.
Information. Joining cults, participating
Starting our
in
own
them.
cult.
Yeah, we love it. No, not really. We just like cult docuseries.
They're super intriguing to me.
Yeah. So the third one is to live in accordance with your means. And obviously we very much promote this. So don't spend what you don't have on things you don't want. That is the first sentence. But again,
revelatory.
We love to say stuff like that, but in the moment it is hard to keep yourself from not wanting things. We love instant gratification, and so we just have to be more committed to this simple lifestyle and know the things that it can bring for us, know what living within our means can give us, so that we have incentive to say no to things. Like, I love being able to work for myself 25 hours a week and we don't rely on my income. And so in order to maintain that, we have to we choose to just live on Travis's income. So, I mean, that idea, the beauty of this lifestyle I've built is a bigger motivation to spend within our budget than any external motivation could be. So yeah.
Yeah. The next one on here, number 4, is to declutter your home. Oh, I could not agree with this more.
I knew that one was coming.
And I know for some, we're all going to have different standards of this, right? Some of us naturally want very few things in our living spaces, and others of us prefer a more eclectic style, and we like to keep things around and tinker. I definitely fall in the former category. I just don't want things around, and I never have. So
I don't want things or people or anything.
I'm busy. I'm a busy woman.
I'm busy.
But in all seriousness, and wherever you fall on that spectrum, I will say that for all of us, it is helpful to have less. Again, wherever we're starting from, clutter in our spaces and our physical spaces can correlate to clutter in our minds and bodies. And sometimes it happens in our minds and bodies first. And what we see in our homes and living spaces is reflective of that. So where we're able to declutter, it can also produce this weightlessness. It can remove some of the burden and free up capacity and emotion and mental space when we don't feel so physically weighed down by everything that our eyes are looking at and drawn to. It's like competing for our attention.
Absolutely. And you can have one or two things that you collect. It does not mean you can definitely consider yourself a minimalist. Definitely, practice simple living. If you like to collect things, it's just not like 20 different things, but like I know a lot of people, especially in our Frugal Friends community, love books and love to just have a wall of bookshelves and books, or if they don't have it, they dream about it. So that is you don't have to get rid of something you love. to practice simple
Just
living.
know that your collections will collect dust.
It's so true. We'll talk about that in a cleaning episode.
Yeah,
I guess.
put that on a bumper sticker. Your collections will collect. As you collect, they will collect.
But beyond that, you can love things and still practice minimalism, still practice simple living. Just can't love everything. You know, you don't have the,
And you won't be able to walk in your home.
right. You don't have the capacity to love everything. Like, you can like a lot of things, but you have to find what you love, keep that, and be willing to discard the rest. So the next one is, I love this one. I love it so much. Single task. Who hates multitasking? Who can multitask? Nobody can fully multitask.
Yeah, it's not actually a reality.
It's no. And when you try to do it, you only create stress in your life. And then that stress becomes guilt and shame because you can't multitask in the same way all the other moms or Gen Zers are multitasking on TikTok and Instagram. So stop and just single task. Choose your one thing. And everyone knows I'm obsessed with the one thing, the book. They also have a podcast. And the theory is just, what can I do now? What is the one thing that I can do that by which everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? So that just means finding your highest ROI tasks throughout the day and really focusing on the things that are most important and either delegating out, hiring out, or just saying no to the things that are not a high ROI.
Right. And then I think we can be more satisfied with ourselves when we give ourselves permission to have the one task versus, oh, I'm trying to juggle it all and none of it's going well. And then it all just feels like a failure.
Yeah.
Which relates to number 6, which is set realistic goals and reward yourself. And I just want to read this first paragraph under number 6. I think it's helpful. The author says, we often underestimate how long a task will take, and then we beat ourselves up over not making enough progress, or we expect too much of ourselves when trying to embrace a new lifestyle. Then we tell ourselves we're just too busy or not motivated enough to make a change, and the self-fulfilling prophecy comes true. So I think connected to this idea of single task is setting realistic goals and then celebrating afterwards. Again, that then correlates to how we view ourselves, the permission that we give ourselves along the way, setting realistic goals, achieving them, doing them with a singular focus is not only less complicated, but also actually produces beneficial results rather than complicated, messy results.
The messy things that you're trying to get picked up. And yeah, so I love this. I love the like single tasking and goal setting and like having fewer goals and shorter goals. And so also single tasking doesn't mean you're like focusing on just like one thing a day and forgetting all your other responsibilities. We're talking about this along with your goals in a reasonable, something that fits with the responsibilities that you are actually obligated to. But so for me, it really rears its head when I'm trying to clean the house and I'll do one thing and then I'll get distracted and start to clean another thing. And then I'll get distracted and clean another thing. And then I'll go back to the original thing because I'm like, oh no. I mean, for me, like having the goal, maybe setting a timer and being like, okay, I'm going to do this one thing. I can only do this one thing for as long as the timer's going off, and then I can move on, even if I haven't finished it. Typically, once the timer goes off, I'm far enough into it that I want to finish it. And so that's a very basic example, but it can apply to other things in our lives as well.
And then it gamifies it.
Yeah, gamifies it. But yeah, so all of this is within reason. 7 is appreciate the little things and practice gratitude. I love this much more than like contentment, but I love gratitude because it really, the more grateful you are, the less you want. Like you still want to achieve more and you still want to serve the world and the people around you more, but it's not out of a sense of just trying to achieve or get more. It becomes this sense of like, I am so thankful for what I have and what I've done, and I would love to serve the world more with more of that. So she recommends like a few prompts to experience gratitude. I love gratitude journals, but she's like, you can write in the evening in detail about 3 things you're grateful for that day, even small things, or you can list 3 things that you value and appreciate about your partner or family. And you can do that maybe with a different person every day. I love this one. Describe a challenge you've dealt with recently and what you learned from the experience. I think reframing your personal finance journey, especially with budgeting, I think so many people think when they mess up with budgeting or they have a challenge with budgeting, that is actually a failure. But they're just surprises that come up and you can't help them. And so when you can view these bumps in the road as challenges, and then reflect on what you learned from the experience and be grateful that you went through it and that now you have something that you have learned from it, that takes it from something that you hate to something that you love, because it allows you to learn more about yourself. And so the last one is write about 3 people who've made the biggest positive impact in your life.
It's beautiful. I love gratitude. I love what it produces. Short-term and long-term. Number 8 on here is embrace the white space. And they don't just mean like find yourself in a white room and enjoy yourself. And I would even term this margin. Like if you're looking at a piece of paper, the space of the paper that you're not supposed to write in or could be used for some notes, or the side of the road that gives you a little bit of wiggle room to be able to pull off, like not filling it up, not so filling every single space of your life, and not only not filling it, embracing it and fostering gratitude for those times and identifying how you want to engage in those times of just really slowing down. This article talks about doing nothing. I would probably push back on that a little bit. I think that there are things that we can, quote unquote, do that are life-giving, that are slower pace, that help us to engage in our full personhood. I don't think it necessarily means we have to just sit and let our minds go blank. And they talk too about letting yourself experience boredom might be a decent thing. I will say that is healthy.
I think that's healthy.
I don't know that I have, and we've talked about this. I talked about this with a friend and Eric too. I don't know that I've ever felt bored since maybe middle school, possibly before that. And it's probably not a great thing, but it's an interesting realization. But I don't know that like boredom is the sign that you've now embraced space. I think you don't have to just be like, I don't know what to do with myself. There could be things that you do that aren't just meaningless. They give the example of taking a hike or wander your neighborhood on a walk with no real destination in mind. And I like the example they give too. If you've ever been in the shower and had a great idea, then you can understand the benefit of giving yourself space to just let your mind wander. It's kind of that idea, doing something cathartic. Yeah, just not feeling the pressure of filling space. This is one practice that could be really helpful. Embrace the white space, embrace the margin, make room for margin.
Yeah, I will say that having a young child really forces you to do this, because there's only so much Blippi I can watch before I'm just like staring into the white space. That's probably why I play so much solitaire. But I think it would be helpful maybe if you are like me and you have a hard time turning your brain off, to set a timer to just give yourself 10 minutes to sit in the white space and, let your mind wander. So that way you're including it, but it doesn't feel like it's indefinite or will cause you anxiety because you don't know when it's going to end. So the last one is don't expect miracles. So simple living will improve your life. It can improve it even drastically, but it will not prevent stress or grant you unlimited happiness and fulfillment, which is so unfortunate. But with most good things, it's not perfect. And so it just creates, it's like having an emergency fund. Emergency funds don't prevent emergencies from happening, but when you have one, emergencies no longer feel like emergencies. They just feel like, oh, it's this expense that I really don't want to have to pay, but I have the money for it. So they become annoyances is what happens. But when you don't have the money to pay for something and you need it, that is an emergency. That's a crisis. And so that's going to take way more stress than when you have the emergency fund. And that's the same thing simple living does. It turns what can become crises, eliminate them completely, or just turn, complicated situations that you can't avoid, turn them into annoyances.
Yeah. Yeah, just as with anything, nothing's going to be a magic wand, but it can get us closer to experiencing deeper satisfaction and benefit. And turning crises into annoyances. I like
That's
that.
the goal. And you know what gives me margin and kind of like is some white space in my day?
It's not magic, but it is the goal.
It is great.
The bill of the week.
That's right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the bill of the week.
Hello, Jen and Jill. This is Molly from Nebraska, and I discovered your podcast back in January, and it's been one of the biggest resources for me as I've been learning more about personal finance. And I am calling about the bill of the week because I just paid off my credit cards 2 days ago. Yeah, I had a lot of credit card debt, and I just paid it off, the last one. So thanks so much for all your help. All right, bye.
Oh my gosh, Molly! Congratulations. I'm so glad that we could be on this journey with you, doing this awesome thing.
Been together since January and already got the credit cards paid off. That is legit, Molly.
That's what we
Congratulations.
like to hear. I love it.
So if you have a bill of the week, whether it's a paid off credit card or any other kind of debt or something completely unrelated, a bill you like to pay, a bill you hate paying, a guy named Bill, we just really love the ambiguity of this segment.
Yes,
we love listening to you all.
Yeah.
So submit your bill at frugalfriendspodcast.com/bill. We're excited to hear it.
Absolutely. This bill of the week is brought to you by Ting Mobile. Jill and I are on the hunt for services that we can promote on the show that won't just save you a few bucks here and there, where you can see significant savings long term. So we are super excited to be partnering with Ting Mobile and offering listeners a $25 credit at frugal.ting.com.
Ting Mobile is as committed to helping people save money as we are, and they don't sacrifice quality to do so. You can bring your phone, your number, and get access to the best nationwide coverage in America, as well as Ting's award-winning customer service if you ever need help.
So think about where you use your phone throughout your day. And if most places have Wi-Fi available, then making the switch to Ting could be a great money-saving move for you. The Flex plan is just $10 per month per line, and you only pay $5 per gigabyte of data you use. Or you can get unlimited data for $45 a month.
Pretty much any phone will work on Ting, even the latest iPhone. So if your phone bill is more than $45 per line, or you're looking for a discount cell service provider with better coverage, head to frugal.ting.com and get $25 credit when you switch. And now it's time for the lightning
round. So we are going to share complicated things in our life that we have simplified because we are not immune to them. They happen. And I will be fully transparent. I will go first.
Thank you.
I'll be fully and embarrassingly transparent. So everyone knows that I do like personal finance, educating is my full-time job. This podcast and writing and all of that, that is what I do for a living. And in it, I tell everyone, focus on one thing at a time. Whatever that is, whatever order you do it in, do what's right for you, but do one thing at a time, you know, very much like what we were talking about earlier. And so in my business, at one point, I was doing maybe 6 different things at a time. I was doing this podcast. I was doing TikTok, YouTube, freelance writing, trying to build a blog, and maybe that's it. But there's probably more, honestly. And somebody had to point it out to me that I hadn't chosen my one thing. I was trying to do so many things because I have this scarcity mindset that I'm always dealing with because I thought if I just choose one thing, I eliminate 5 income streams and I lose 4/5 of my money, which is untrue. You can do it for a little bit, but long term, like a lifestyle and a business like that is unsustainable. And so this summer, I decided to just do one thing, which is this podcast.
Woo woo!
I stopped doing everything else, except for a little bit of freelance writing because I do actually enjoy that, but just a few articles a month. And I really had to take my own advice because it was easy for me to do it in one area of my life, in my personal finances, in my living, like the things. I wasn't being hypocritical about the things I teach, but it was just I'm like not a business person. I don't teach business. I don't know that side. Mm-hmm. Like it's just, I am constantly learning that. And I didn't see, it just crept up. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't obvious. Yeah. I had to have somebody who didn't know me tell me, like, this is what you're doing. Do you see this? Oh, no, I didn't see that. And so that was a simplification I made over the summer.
Well, I'm super excited about it because this podcast is our little love child. That's not the right word, but it's what came to mind. Our baby. So that's fun for me. But I will also say, I think it's a consolidation. Like from my perspective, it's not as if now all of these other things are no longer. It's just under one umbrella. So yeah, there's still an Instagram account and a YouTube channel and this and that, but and the podcast, but it's not as disjointed, which I think in that, yeah, it's not like, oh, now it's just super simple, easy, but it is less complicated.
Right. Absolutely.
Nice, Jen. Well, I mean, that was beautiful. My examples are nowhere near that complex or involved or insightful or in depth. And maybe that means that I need to look at my life more.
Or maybe it just means you've mastered it more than I have.
Oh, no, there's still edits that need to happen for sure. I think some of the things that come to mind, so just a couple of different examples, like for me, exercise, like related to the 9 tips in that last article that we were talking about, like focusing on one thing or single task or setting small realistic goals. Exercise was always something that I knew I wanted to do, but the way that everybody else did it was never super attainable for me. Like I'd try this and I'd get discouraged and I'd be bummed. I didn't see the results that I wanted to see. And it just became really complicated until now I figured out what works for me. And it is a short amount of time every morning with YouTube. And I've been doing that for like 6 months now. So I know, all right, I think I found it. I think I found the sustainable, simple, at-home thing for me. Some other things, and again, these are just more just like lifestyle tips, but for me, it means so much. Clutter is overwhelming to me, paperwork in particular. I mean, I have so much already automated, but whatever does come into my home, I immediately deal with it, or I put it, if it's the weekend, because I also have pretty strong boundaries around my weekends. They're really sacred to me. I'll put it on my desk, close the door, and come back to it. If it's an important piece of paper, I take a picture of it and I keep it in my phone in certain files of what that falls under. But I don't keep paper around. And that is something complicated that feels more simple to me now.
Yeah, I feel like choosing the few things that are very important to you that have the biggest effect on your mental health, I think that's the greatest place to start. So like when we were paying off debt, we did everything to save money. We just did everything. And now that we're living in sustainability, really the biggest thing we do is we meal plan. That's the biggest thing that we can do to keep our spending in check. So that's like the only thing we focus on. And granted, those 2 years of paying off debt did train us in good habits, and we needed that. But it wasn't a sustainable lifestyle. And
yeah.
So now we choose our, the one thing that we focus on, and that's our version of simple spending.
Sometimes it is in these smaller areas of life that can produce so much breathing room for us. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's the big things, but oftentimes it's identifying these little things that can work for us. That is that margin, that white space. It's also interesting to think about this topic and see the irony of it too. I know that we touched on this a bit, but as I think back on my life and some of the edits that I've made over time, you would think tiny living, that produces simplicity. That's simple living because you don't have a lot, you don't need a lot, you don't have a lot of expenses. But having done it, I realize, part of that's true. And then part of it is, it becomes super complicated the second that the weather hits below freezing, or the second that your pipes aren't working to get your black water tank. And look it up. It's what you think it is. It's your actual physical body waste that you've got to interact with. Like, there's so many pieces to it. And where do I park this? And where do I stay? And what happens if I get a flat tire on my home? So there is a give and take, I think, to all of it, and really identifying and trying things out. I think, we also, it's been a goal of mine to have one vehicle, and we're there, and I love it. And for the most part, it's simple and it's less expensive to only have insurance on one vehicle, to only pay for the maintenance on one vehicle. But when that one vehicle breaks, it causes a storm all around. Now, how do we get from point A to point B to get our groceries? Now we've got to rent a car. Now we've got to do this and that just happened. So
it's just fresh trauma.
For permission that even when we identify the things that we believe are simple or the world defines as simple, there's always going to be consequences to it, alternatives to it, and we're doing the best we can to look at all aspects in its entirety, in the whole of it. What is going to ultimately lead to the least amount of complication? And when we do come upon complication, how can we make room for margin, for opportunities to rest? Because sometimes our days require 18 hours from us. That's okay. But learning to be able to recognize the days where it only requires 6 hours of our time, energy, and effort, and rest in some of that margin, and look for that margin. I think that's my summary.
Okay, great. I mean, it's worth it. I think all I had to say. Simple living is worth it. I think it's fulfilling, and you can't love everything. So let's find the things we do love. And thank you for simply listening to this show and simply being present with us. We want to thank you for your kind reviews, sharing on social media, all the things that help more people find Frugal Friends podcast and give us a try so that they can hear these tips and this message as well. So like this particular review that we got from Alpine Emmy says, these ladies got me motivated, 5 stars. Thanks for the great podcast. I have been listening to all the episodes and trying to take action, or at least notes on how to apply to my own debt-free journey. I'm a ski instructor / rec center instructor, so I have to learn about a regular income, side hustling, budgeting, etc. While I was already minimalist by force of living in an expensive area, Jen and Jill have encouraged me to pursue creative new avenues to make sure I'm financially advancing myself. Great energy and fun. Thanks again. Lovely. I mean, thank you, Emmy. That was beautiful.
I love to know when we are a part of people's motivation for something, like that extra boost that's needed. That's what we hope from having frugal friendships. Well, we also want to thank our friends who are sharing these episodes on social media. So when you share the latest episode and tag us on Facebook or Instagram, we add you to our monthly drawing. Here's what it is. For every 5 tags and reviews we get each month, we give away a copy of the Frugal Friends workbook.
Woot woot. So definitely leave us a review and send the screenshot to frugalfriendspodcast@gmail.com to get yourself entered into that drawing. And don't forget to tag us on social, and that will also enter you in to see the Frugal Friends workbook, which is just a bunch of 1-week challenges to more simple living, essentially, and financial freedom.
More gamifying stuff. All right. See you next week.
Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Siriani.
How have you simplified meal planning?
I use Cook Smarts.
Oh, yes.
I mean, point blank. frugalfriendspodcast.com/cooksmarts.
I didn't mean for our post roll to be a plug,
I know.
but it's reality.
I know
we
you
really
didn't,
think
but
it's great.
Yeah. They tell me what to make. If I don't like it, I'll pick something from the archives, add it all to my Walmart grocery pickup, and I'll add like a frozen pizza or something frozen for like one day, and then eat out twice a week.
Love it.
That's about it.
Just really, scheduling your life. I mean, there's obviously flexibility in that, but to know what to expect, to take out the decision making, it's so good.
Yeah, I love it when I don't have to make decisions. It's really great. I love to be told what to do in some areas.
Only in some areas.
Right.